Boston's talk station.
Some of what we've learned in the last 24 hours since we were here yesterday. And I want you to tell me whether you agree with Sarah Palin, who now says that it's about time for this president to be impeached. It's about time to take this country back from someone who obviously doesn't give a blank about this nation maintaining its sovereignty, its integrity, its strength, its superpower status. He's reduced the military. He's brought the economy to its knees. He's bringing our medical condition to its knees by the dangerous situation of bringing in some of these people, which we'll go into as we open up this program. And maybe the only answer is that the cancer is Barack Obama. That the cancer is the diseased thinking of he and his colleagues, cohorts, Valerie Jarrett, Michelle Obama, and others of that ilk who seem to think that this country can be walked on by illegality without any rule of law. Because the first place I start with what's happening now, and I go no further, is the issue of immigration law. And what it says is, and we've repeated this over and over again here, Title 8, Section 1325 of the U.S. Code, go ahead and Google it, you'll read it. It is a misdemeanor to enter this country without authorization the first time, it's a felony the second time, and it is a violation of federal law. And nobody's enforcing that. It shouldn't go any further than that. Anybody who's caught in this country illegally should be sent back out. There's no rocket science to this thing. But let me go through some of what's been happening. Let's make it very clear. The facts on the ground, if you will. Todd Starnes was interviewed publicly about this, that the illegal immigrant children being held at Lackland Air Force Base in Oklahoma are bringing diseases into America. Tuberculosis, scabies, lice. The lice are so bad you can see them running down the faces of these children. It's described by Mr. Starnes as one giant emergency room. He went on to say that tuberculosis has become a very dangerous issue at Lackland Air Force Base, where these kids are being held. Nurses say the number of children representing symptoms of tuberculosis is simply staggering. That's what the nurses say. Staggering. Spitting up blood, chest pains, constant coughing. Now we know in Austin, Texas, never mind just Oklahoma, in Austin, state capital, there are at least 3 confirmed cases for the illegals of tuberculosis. The federal government is covering up the threat of this health crisis, says Mr. Starnes. They say the kids have scabies, chicken pox, and lice so severe they can be seen crawling down the faces of these children. Now, what is scabies? In case you weren't aware, let me go through what scabies is. An infestation of the skin caused by a tiny mite. It results when the female mite burrows into the skin and lays its eggs. The scabies mite does not suck blood. It does not transmit any disease other than scabies between people. It is highly contagious. It is passed from person to person through close and generally prolonged physical contact, sexual contact, spread from person to person by sharing clothing or towels or bedding, and it can be acquired from certain mammals, and it goes on from there. Factors that increase your chance of getting scabies, which is now a serious problem. If you're less than 15 or older than 65, close physical contact with a person who has scabies, living in close quarters with others. Well, these kids are all living in close quarters, and some of our agents have already contracted scabies as a result. If you have a weakened immune system, that's happening as well. Scabies, tuberculosis, lice. You know what this reminds me of? What happened when the Haitians came into this country with tuberculosis, lice that had to be cleaned. I remember I was on the air in Miami at the time. The lice had to be cleaned out of the hair of those kids because by no fault of their own, they were diseased, they were unhealthy, they were filthy because they weren't taken care of properly. And now the same thing is happening all over again. It is as if we're reliving the devastating problems that occurred in Dade County, Florida, when the Mariel boat lift happened, and subsequently with other illegal immigration. But unfortunately, we have now this problem of dispersing these kids all over the country. What is it anybody is thinking? It is. Does the president want his own children facing this and having to deal with this? I tell you, it is beyond comprehension that we have this going on. Absolutely beyond comprehension. And you need to know that this country is in serious trouble because there is an unwillingness to deal with it. And that's why Sarah Palin makes the point that it is about time to get involved in getting this president out of office, that the Republicans can't just sit back, yawn, and play the game with this president. We go on from there. The Arizona sheriff, Paul Babot, from Pinal County, whom I've interviewed many times. In fact, we interviewed him on this program a while back. And Sheriff Babot has been a leader in trying to deal with the illegal immigrants. He's in a southern Arizona county right near the border. He says the federal government's released criminal illegal aliens into his community. His officers have arrested individuals who've already been deported 10 or 15 times. The government has released, says Sheriff Babot, dangerous violent criminals in his county. They refuse to give him the names of the criminals. He says there are cartel scouts for the cartels ushering the drugs through all the way from the southern border with Mexico up to Phoenix. And they go through his county. He said he had a guy yesterday he arrested, and every day it happens the same way, 10 times or 15 times deported, because there are no consequences for breaking the law. These people laugh. They keep coming back. It is clearly the problem. Now we find out that there are at least 16 unaccompanied illegal minors who are members of the absolutely brutal, absolutely vicious El Salvadorian street gang, Mara Salvatrucha, or MS-13 as it's being called. How do we know? Because they left graffiti on the walls in Nogales, in southern Arizona, at the Nogales Border Patrol Processing Center, and the graffiti shows their ties to the organization. They admitted to their gang associations. The FBI says MS-13 is one organization that perpetrates violence from assaults to homicides using firearms, machetes, blunt objects to intimidate rival gangs, law enforcement, the general public. They often target middle and high school students for recruitment. Do you want your teenage kids going to school with members of MS-13 coming out of El Salvador? Because this president won't protect the border and allows these crooks, criminals, thugs, and murderous obscenities to come into this country and cause havoc when they get here. MS-13 gang members have admitted to murder and torture in their home countries. The ones who are here, they're being held for placement inside the United States. You understand this, folks? They're being held for placement here. Well, remember that, you know what's unbelievable? I said to you on Monday, Gil Kurlikowski, who's the Border Patrol Commissioner for Obama, said, oh, these are not dangerous people. These are just innocent people trying to have a better life. We'll play the violin for you. Kurlikowski is a nothing as a law enforcement officer. He was a Seattle police chief who wouldn't face up to a criminal if his life depended on it or if it didn't depend on it. He wouldn't do it. When he was police chief in Seattle, it was all about sitting down with the gangsters and having a cup of coffee at Starbucks and working out your issues. He didn't believe in strong law enforcement. He doesn't now. And these people are not dangerous? How can Kurlikowski say with a straight face they're not dangerous when they're MS-13 gang members? What is he talking about? It's beyond anyone's rational comprehension. And then, of course, I mentioned yesterday in Virginia, Prince William County, 7,000 undocumented immigrants. We call them illegal aliens, but unfortunately the press doesn't want to call them that. NBC calls them undocumented immigrants in a report I'm looking at. They are illegal aliens, NBC, and don't forget it. Almost 7,000 were arrested in the county, and now about 10%, 773 of them, are back in the county and arrested for new crimes, and the county wants to know where they are, that they're dangerous people. Well, you know what the federal government's saying? They have privacy rights. Illegal aliens who are committing crimes, felons, brutal thugs, have privacy rights, so we can't tell you where they are or what they're doing, Prince William County, even though they're in your county and maybe committing more crimes. And yet there are people living in Prince William County who say that it's personal information, it's private information, and the information shouldn't be revealed about them. Is that rational? Should illegal aliens committing violent crimes have protection of their privacy rights when they enter the country breaking the law in the first place. We have lots more to go to, but let's get to some of your calls. 617-266-6868. Do you understand the turning point? Do you understand this country is in the gutter? Do you understand that the floodgates have been opened for the destruction of the quality of life as we've known it? We eliminated tuberculosis. We don't have scabies rampant in this country. We don't have lice rampant in this country. Except when we had the Haitian kids coming in, now these kids from Central America coming in, and your kids are going to suffer the consequence, as I just pointed out. These are airborne. Tuberculosis can be airborne. And the scabies, the same thing, just close contact. It is scary and frightening. Dave, you're on with Mike Siegel in for Jeff Kuhner at WRKO. Good morning.
Hey, Mike, a couple of points. Number one, it's laughable that the president asked for $3 to $4 billion in emergency aid.
$3.7 billion exactly, and he won't even go to the border to look at it. What a shameful disgrace he is. He won't go down there to look at the problem he created.
Right, and so what's laughable about it is, since he created it, now he wants the taxpayer to bail him out. So I'm sorry, if you had followed the law, you wouldn't be in this problem. And secondly,
well, let me ask you the question. Everyone calling today, I'm just going to ask the question. Is it time for an impeachment proceeding, as Sarah Palin suggests?
I mean, on the face of it, it would seem so, but you have to have some really hard evidence, sort of like they had during the Nixon proceedings, where, you know, you had some very incriminating tapes and other documentation and previous testimony. And here I think we're still talking in somewhat broad concepts. So we see the result, but what's the sort of audit trail to bring the charges? And you'll never get a conviction in the Senate. So you might impeach, but you won't get a conviction in the Senate.
But the one thing about that, same thing with Bill Clinton, and obviously we'd all agree, Bill Clinton's violations were far less severe to this country than a Barack Obama's. But it's on the record that he's the second impeached president of the country behind Andrew Johnson. And he has to live with that the rest of his life. You're right about the Senate at this point, but you know what? There are Democrats who are speaking out now, like Congressman Cuellar, who just has been coming.
That could well be. So it might be, the time might be ripe for that. The second point I just wanted to make is, you know, in America, we always took care of ourselves at the lowest level. When things were wrong, people in town government, county government got together to try to fix the problems that they had. And that's what we have to do. The local law enforcement people have to act with or without the federal government. And if enough of them band together and act, what are the feds going to do? They should get out of the way. If they can't do it or won't do it, then we should do it at the lowest level. And
the problem is we can't do it because I just pointed out in Prince William County, the feds won't give information about who the violent felons are that they released back into the community. That's true all over the country. They're not releasing. A matter of fact, they just said that any media going into, they're going to set up a media day. No questions, no conversations, no photos, no discussions. Only visual observation. And no recording or taking notes. Just strictly come in, take a look, and leave. That's what we have gotten to in this country. You tell me whether that's not like the old Soviet Union.
It is, but there's also still waves and waves of people coming across the border by themselves that are not being orchestrated in planes. And at least we could try to stop those people coming across in Arizona, Texas, New Mexico, and California.
But Dave, I agree, but then what happens? Eric Holder said he's going after Sheriff Joe Arpaio in Maricopa County, where Phoenix is, because Sheriff Joe was arresting and turning over to ICE illegal aliens. And Holder says, no, you can't do it. It's federal law. Stay away from it. They don't want to let anybody do it. That's the problem.
You have a courageous governor out there in Arizona. Maybe she just needs to step up and protect her law enforcement people.
Oh, yeah. Well, she's doing that. I mean, you're right about Governor Brewer. She's doing that.
Right.
It's a nightmare.
It is, and it's an intractable problem. But if we don't start chipping away at the low level around the edges, then we're just going to get steamrolled.
The only point I'll make to you, and we'll wrap it up, is that when you have a cancer, you have to cut it out. The cancer is Barack Obama. I do not believe he's ever going to change his intent to bring this country down into equivalence with third world countries. And by bringing all these people in, we'll become a third world country. And unless he is removed and his ilk and his kind are removed, we're not going to see this country restore itself. That's just my view of it. Appreciate the call, and I thank you for it, too. We go to very quickly. We'll actually better take the break first. Come back to Jeff, Kevin, and your calls. There are open lines. Do you folks sense the same compelling circumstance I do from the reports we read? 617-266-6868. 617-266-6868 as to whether you believe, based on some of the reports I didn't even get to everything. Do you believe that this country is in jeopardy with Barack Obama as president? Is it time for impeachment? What other options do we have? And where do you see this country heading? And can we solve this problem with Obama as the chief executive officer of the country? Mike Siegel in for Jeff Kuhner at Boston's talk station, WRKO. Your calls are next.
Yes, it is time. A great awakening is due in this country, and this is the message that will be sent to our president, that he is not an imperial president, and lawlessness will not be accepted by the American people. That's not what he was elected to do, was to create his own laws as he goes along. I think it's time, a little less talk, a lot more action. When we see even GOP lawmakers who are recognizing and proclaiming Obama's violation of the Constitution and then ignoring that Constitution and the power they have to impeach, gets kind of frustrating for the American people. Somebody needs to look out for the working class Americans, and the tipping point in this drive towards impeachment for me has been the illegal immigration issue, the crisis created by Obama, where nobody's looking out for the working class of Americans, including good, hard-working, wonderful legal immigrants. Impeachment is a message that has to be sent to our president that we're not going to put up with this lawlessness.
All right, folks, that's Sarah Palin articulately explaining her view. You're welcome to respond to her if you care to. Christine is first. Hi, Christine. You're on with Mike Siegel for Jeff Kuhner at WRKO. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm great.
I'm just calling because I'm just appalled by the whole immigration status. Being a Canadian, trying to get proper paperwork in order is a nightmare. I've been in the U.S. for 15 years. Recently married an American a couple of years ago, have paid thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to stay legal in America, and I only have 2 months left on this, my immigration, and if I don't get this condition waived, then I get deported. So what happens then? Do I just go across another border that they don't
Christine,
stop me? Or?
I guess you have to go across the southern border. That's where anybody can cross freely. Isn't this... Look, I think people need to now understand that what Sarah Palin talked about as the tipping point is this thing. What I just described, I haven't even covered everything I was going to cover. What I just described about the medical issues is overwhelming. We're talking about the possibility of these kids going into classrooms, and your kids, people listening right now, your kids wind up contracting TB or scabies or whatever else there is from these other kids. That's not a criticism of the other children. It's just a reality that they are diseased. And you want to put that in society? That's a time bomb.
And so why aren't the people that are in power able to joust him out of power? I don't understand.
That's the answer. That's what Sarah Palin said. He's got to be removed from office by impeachment. And the Republicans need to stand up and do it. That's her point. And I appreciate it, Christine, and I wish you good luck in staying here. There's a great example. I'm in the medical field myself, and like I said, I've been jumping through the ring of fire to stay here legally, and it sounds like I don't have to do anything. I can just, stay. Well, somebody like you will probably get nailed. They'll let the people from the South stay here, and probably coming in from Canada, they'll probably nail you to the wall. Oh, I know. I'm legally. A horrible, horrible person. Just, evil. All right. Thanks for your time. Christine, thank you for calling. And there she's going through the right way. Isn't that unbelievable? Mickey next. Mickey, you're on with Mike Siegel for Jeff Kuhner at WRKO. Good morning.
Yeah, hey, Mike. I think Deval Patrick has already opened the floodgates for us here in Massachusetts.
Well, he's a carbon copy of Barack Obama. He'd even been talked about as running for president. He absolutely is. And I was up at Hanscom for the past 2 nights, just outside of Hanscom Air Force Base, and I think they're bringing them in at night. Oh, they've been doing it for about 8 months. They've been sneaking them in. And now it's been exposed because it's more open.
The C-130s have been flying in left and right.
What? You got to ask yourself the question: why would he be doing this? And the answer is because, in my view, he wants to bring down this country to third world status to be equal to everybody else. He doesn't believe in having sovereign borders. Wants this to be a.
Do you want to hear my resolution to amnesty?
Go ahead.
No more wall. All right, no more fence. What we have to do is, if the Mexican government doesn't want to keep their own people in their own country and help the U.S., then we take over Mexico.
But the problem with that is that's what they want. That's what the left wants. I quoted Joe Biden. I quoted Nancy Pelosi yesterday. They're talking about creating a confederation or some form of closer relationship between Canada, Mexico, and the United States. We'd lose our sovereignty. That's what they want. Thank you for calling. I appreciate it. Let's go to Joe next. Joe, you're on with Mike Siegel in for Jeff Kuhner at Boston's talk station, WRKO. Hello.
Hi, yes, Mike. My statement is simple. When we have a president, an attorney general, and Congress who refuse to obey all prior laws of all prior administrations, who by executive action overturn the rule of the people, when we have a Congress that spends 3 years with an illegal, unconstitutional blocking of any discussion in public, any debate of the budget, and we're expected to still pay taxes, I have made a decision that until freedoms return to the country, that I have to cheat on my federal taxes, and about a third of my income is gray enough so I can get away with it and still show that I can support myself. I never did this before, so he's making all other citizens commit illegal acts that people like me never considered. I was proud to pay my taxes when it was under the laws of the people. We're no longer under the laws of the people. It's Venezuela. And we have wimpy Congress people, I don't care what party, who refuse to take action, like Elizabeth Warren. She is falling right in path with this. We have a governor who's falling with literally a takeover of the citizen sovereignty. I will not be ruled. I will be governed, but I will not be ruled. And the only defense that I have to prepare for the disaster, the financial calamity that they are trying to create, is to put money away in gold. And that's what I'm doing.
Well, I understand your point, but really, you're putting yourself in the position of stooping to their level by breaking the law. I'm not saying you should or shouldn't. I'm just saying that's what you're doing, is going to their level. And to me, the more important point is the economy is important, but the more important point is the medical situation. It could get out of control. These are very transmittable diseases, TB, scabies, and others that who knows what else is coming in here. That's all we heard about so far. We'll come right back to your calls. Let's jam the lines. Should this president be impeached, as Sarah Palin suggested? 617-266-6868, 630 at Boston's talk station, WRKO. And back we are. Good to have you with us. Mike Siegel in for Jeff Kuhner at Boston's talk station, WRKO. A good morning to you. 7 o'clock, we're going to get into the whole situation in the Middle East and the abominable nature of Hamas attacking now Jerusalem and Tel Aviv, as we see the ways in which Hamas just does not want to cooperate with having Israel even exist. So how in the world can a country negotiate with a group that wants its extinction? And the answer is, of course, you cannot. So we'll get into that and what's happening over there. Let's get back. The lines are jammed here. Let's get back to your calls on whether Obama ought to be impeached. Sarah Palin says yes. What do you say? And we will start with Kevin. Kevin, you're on with Mike Siegel in for Jeff Kuhner at WRKO. Good morning.
Welcome back, Mike. Mike, we're going to miss you. All right? It was great for you to fill in. I don't know how you find the energy, especially being up at 2 and 3 a.m., if not getting any shut-eye from your own show. And I'm not going to accuse you, Mike, of going down to the dope dispensaries that opened up in Seattle, Washington. It's sad. Well, we're following you. We're going to be opening up within a short time, too. It's a shame. That's the ball, Patrick. That's Harvard. The mentality is, it's a poison. Going just one issue on, I'm glad that you maintain the subject, the dangers, the invasion that's going on at the border. Nancy Pelosi, notice how quick some years ago the State of Confusion address or the State of Union address, Joe Wilson yelled out, "You're a liar," to Obama, which we've all found out he is. How quick they were to censor him. And Nancy Pelosi, not 2 weeks ago, was down the week before last at the border welcoming, "Come ye, come all." And that means, Michael, if I land in Istanbul, I turn into a Turkey citizen. Wherever I go, what does that mean? That I'm an automatic instead of, as we know, wherever we fly, as I've worked abroad, I have to see that either consulate or go to New York and have my papers in line. It is a crying shame. And now, within 10 days, it went from asking for $2 billion. Now it's up that Barack Obama is going to be asking for $3.7 billion, as I call it, $3,700 million, okay, to quell this. And now he's saying he's going to put border agents there on the border. Shalom to you. I'll take what you're going to say off of the air. It's a crying shame, whether it be here within our own borders or what's happening in the borders of Iraq, Turkey, and the crisis in Israel.
We'll get to that, too. I appreciate the call. Thank you for the kind words. But, you know, the bottom line really is the rubber meets the road at some point. And getting beyond just this immigration question, the question is this president, for 2 more years, going to bring this country to a level that will make it impossible or inordinately difficult to come back from? Will we be able to salvage this country after 2 more years of these policies, or lack of policies, whatever you want to call it? Look, the best you can say is that he's incompetent in all of these areas. The worst you can say, which is more the case, is that he knows exactly what he's doing, and he's doing it with every intent. Doesn't care about the Senate Democrats losing in November. Doesn't really care about that. He cares about his ideology. That's why he's talking privately about funding Elizabeth Warren with his supporters, who are billionaires, not unlike what Harry Reid says, for running for president. Can you imagine her? There would be a female version of Barack Obama. What else would it be if she were running and she was successful? All right, let's go to Bob next. Bob, you're on with Mike Siegel for Jeff Kuhner at WRKO. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Mike. Thanks for filling in, doing a great job. Obama's looking for $3.7 billion to try and solve this problem. Does anybody believe for 1 minute that he's going to hire more border guards? He stopped the building of the fence. He stopped any kind of border protection. And why would anybody believe that he's going to use this money for border guards? He's a liar, and he lies about everything he talks about. Every time he comes on television, I just turned it off because he tells nothing but lies. He's a wordsmith. That's all he is.
Bob, the point that the people have to make their own decision about is whether he wants the best interest of this country and is just doing the wrong thing, or whether he wants this country brought down and is doing exactly what he intended to do by bringing all these people into the country. You have to start from that. Well, what are his motives? What is his intent? Is it goodwill for this country, or does he intend to change this country? And I believe he's intending to change this country and its character in terms of it becoming a very different nation than it was, because he doesn't believe in borders.
I know.
He believes in a global circumstance where people can just travel as they see fit.
Yeah, well, he said he was going to do this when he first got elected, and when he gets up and speaks, he lives in a world of words. None of it means anything. He just says what he thinks might smooth things over, or maybe people believe in what he's saying. He's just a total liar. He's got to go.
All right. So then, do you support impeachment?
Oh, absolutely. I've been saying that for years. Nothing new here,
Bob, I appreciate it, and I thank you for calling. All right, we move right along. Get your comments about that point that Sarah Palin has now made. She's the first really nationally recognized Republican leader, and she's not even sure she's going to stay in the Republican Party. As she put it last night, if the party moves away from me, then I guess I'll no longer be a Republican, basically, is what she said. Kind of like Ronald Reagan when he was a Democrat. He said, the party left me, I didn't leave the party. All right, so we go next to Derek. Derek, you're on WRKO. Mike Siegel for Jeff Kuhner. Hello.
Hey, top of the morning, Mike.
Thank you.
I just wanted to make two quick points, if I could. As far as the illegal aliens coming over the border, in 2010, didn't we lose, a lot of the blue states lose a lot of representation as far as electorally?
I'd have to go back and check. The Democrats had control of the Senate, and the Republicans won the House. If you're talking about in the House, the Republicans did very well in the House in 2010, and they've been in charge since that point with the majority.
Right. That's the point I'm trying to make, is if he floods all these blue states, like here in Massachusetts, we ended up losing a congressional seat. So if you're trying to build up your blue states, wouldn't that make sense for him to bring in all these illegal aliens?
Well, yeah, they would go to blue states, but because those are the states that would support him. But what's going to happen if, in fact, and look, this is not a movie, this is not fiction. These kids have TB, some of them. That spreads like wildfire if you get into large population centers. The scabies is spreading already to the Border Patrol agents. Some of them are getting it. What's going to happen if these kids start going to school and it starts spreading to those left-wing families' children in Cambridge, for example, where everybody's huffy and puffy, very smug and very condescending with their intellectual prowess, professors at Harvard on the far left? What's going to happen then? When their kids start getting the stuff from these illegal alien kids, what are they going to start thinking?
Oh, absolutely. I don't disagree with you and by any means. It's just, I was just trying to place why they would try to flood all these kids here. I mean, there was, the last report I heard, upwards of 300,000 since April. And, they all seem to be going California, New York, Massachusetts here in Hanscom. And, the disease is just, it's incredible.
Well, and I don't know how anybody can justify that. It's not being harmful to the kid. Look, if they wanted to set up, I thank you for calling too, by the way. If you want to set up, you want to help them, let's cure them and send them back to their home country. But the way it is now, they're just being spread around the country, and the disease will be spread around the country. It is an absurdity, and I can't believe any American people would sit back and just watch. This is a huge crisis. This story is constantly changing every single day. Every day. If you look at the cable channels, it's the driving force of what's happening, because it's an ongoing event that isn't stagnant. It's changing. We're learning more about the harm to this country. 617-266-6868. Should Barack Obama be impeached, as Sarah Palin suggests? Pat Buchanan says no. Sarah Palin says yes. Your calls are next at Boston's talk station, WRKO. We're back at it. Welcome in. Good to have you with us. Mike Siegel here. We'll talk about the Middle East when we come back after the news. Meantime, we're talking about the danger to this country and where we stand. We'll continue with the calls, too, after the news, by the way. If you're with us and you want to continue talking about this, we'll certainly do that as well. Let's go back to your calls on whether Obama should be impeached and where we go from here. Charlene is next. You're on with Mike Siegel for Jeff Kuhner. Charlene at WRKO. Good morning.
Hi. Thank you very much. Here's what Obama's thinking. He sits in the White House and says, from the beginning, from Fast and Furious, everything else, what are they going to do? He knows nothing's going to happen, and I've been saying to myself for a year, this man is doing everything possible to get impeached. Maybe let's look at it from that point. That's what he wants, because then the cities in this nation will burn, and that's something people don't even want to address. You and I both know it's true. Cities will burn. He institutes martial law. And it's not a dictatorship he's going to put in this country. It's a damn caliphate. Because this man is a Muslim, and people say, oh, no. Well, you know what? Maybe you ought to read the Quran. Maybe you ought to look at a section in the Quran that says it's okay, and in fact, you're supposed to lie to your enemies. And in fact, another section says, I think it's called taqiyya. It's okay to even denounce your Muslim religion if it furthers the cause of Islam.
That's true. All of that is true. But the bottom line is Look, I tell you what, Charlene, I'd like to have any African American call me throughout these next 3 hours and tell me why you support Barack Obama. Food stamps have gone from 39 million people to 53 million people under Obama. 14 million more because he can't create meaningful jobs. The unemployment rate among black youth, 16 and older, is much higher, in the high 30%, 36, 37, 38 percentile, much higher than it was under George W. Bush. Why? What has he done for minorities? Why would an African American support this guy? Please tell me. Let's go next to Bruce. Bruce, you're on with Mike Siegel for Jeff Kuhner at WRKO. Good morning.
Hey, Mike.
Yep.
And your last name's Siegel. We should call you Mike Beagle because you're running down the rabbit that's eating all our lettuce. And I just want to get to this little point. The big picture. Every time that there's something going on that we bring our attention to, something else comes up, and we kick everything else aside and dwell on the little things. But the big picture, besides the medical issues, and you made a point about MS-13 and these gangs that are coming through the southern borders, which they're already here, but they just need reinforcements, and that's going to be. And I have a lot of people that are in law enforcement, and there's a lot of people that listen to your show,
Well, let's put it this way. MS-13, these are all kids. The 16 of them that admit to being an MS-13 who are now being housed, at least at the moment, the report is that the Border Patrol is going to disperse them to communities in this country. They're going to put them out there.
My point is, and this is right from a guy that I'm very close with. He's a retired police officer, and he's glad to be retired at this time. Bob Pamachi. He's from Woburn. Great guy. Great American. And all his constituents, all his guys, they're all, the medical thing is one thing, but what is the gang thing, because Barack Obama's kids, they're not going to have Secret Service. And what's going to happen, and I can tell you, the home invasions are going to be up on the rise. Robberies, I mean...
These kids, look, the FBI itself, I read the quote, the MS-13 is worse than the cartels in Mexico. Thank you for calling, too, Bruce. I appreciate it. It's horrifying. They are absolutely the worst of the worst. Torture, brutality, any kind of demeaning of human beings, they will do at MS-13. That's been well known for a long time. Now they're coming to this country, and we're letting them in. At least Obama is. Let's go to Matt. Matt got about a minute at Boston's talk station WRKO. Go right ahead.
Hi, God bless you, Mike. Keep up the support, kid. But listen, I'll be quick. I agree with Pat Buchanan. Tommy's everything, though. Can't do anything for midterms to teach people while up and pay and put it down. Secondly, I think we're living like an
I can't hear you. I don't know if you're on a speakerphone, but I can't hear you.
Oh, you can't hear me?
Try it one more time. You got 30 seconds.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
All right, I thank you. I guess it's not going to work. He said he agreed with Pat Buchanan. I heard that much. And Pat Buchanan says we should not impeach Obama. It would reflect back on the Republican Party and backfire. Well, you can talk about that. Continue with this conversation on these issues regarding this country, its future, and whether to impeach Obama. We'll get into the whole thing on the Middle East. Horrifying situation for Israel. Mike Siegel here for Jeff Kuhner at Boston's talk station, WRKO.
News at the top and bottom. Talk in between.
Yes, it is. Thank me very much. Go right ahead, my friend.
This is AM 680 WRKO, Boston.
Back we are, folks. Good to have you with us, and a good morning to you at Boston's talk station, WRKO. Mike Siegel for Jeff Kuhner. My last day with you, and it's a pleasure to be here and share in the conversation on not such great news about the medical problems we could be facing because of these illegal immigrant children having various problems, tuberculosis, scabies, and other problems that may be spread in the country if they are dispersed around the country. The teenagers in MS-13, one of the most dangerous terrorist groups facing this nation from El Salvador, well known as far more severe, torturous, murderous than even the cartels in Mexico, the Zeta cartel, the Sinaloa cartel, and others. And so those kids may be dispersed throughout this country. They're in control right now of Customs and Border Patrol. We'll get back to your calls, but let me just mention, if you want to discuss what's happening in the Middle East, which on an international scale perhaps is of the same level of crisis as this domestic problem facing us with respect to the immigration of these children. Over half of Israel's population is now hunkered down in bomb shelters. In other words, about 4 million people are in bomb shelters as we speak because of the rocket attacks from Hamas. 20 Israeli cities have been subjected to rocket attack. Hamas has fired over 150 rockets overnight in Israel. 30 of those were intercepted by a missile defense shield called Iron Dome in Israel, but 117 rockets landed in Israel. And, of course, as you know, Hamas targeted civilians. On the Israeli side, they do that all the time. It could be teenagers, pregnant women. It doesn't matter to Hamas. But the terrorists, hide among the civilian population in the Palestinian territories. So if Israel is going to go after these terrorist butchers in Hamas, they have to risk harming civilians. Would even tolerate one rocket. If Mexico sent a rocket into Arizona to attack Phoenix or Tucson or any other city for that matter, what would we do? One rocket. We'd respond immediately. Israel gets attacked by 160, and they're supposed to sit back and do nothing. Well, the Israeli military is saying over the next several days there's going to be a big, significant operation. In the meantime, how do the Arabs respond? Hundreds went to the Temple Mount yesterday afternoon. Why? They wanted to celebrate the barrage of rockets on Israel's civilian population. The video was captioned in Arabic, and it reads, quote, "Celebrations at the Holy Al-Aqsa Mosque after hearing the sounds of rockets explode in occupied Jerusalem." And now they're hitting Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, which means they now can reach about 5 million Israelis with their rockets. And the Israelis, of course, are responding with heavy attacks, air attacks on the Gaza, which, by the way, Israel gave back to the Palestinians. They were occupying Gaza and then gave it back, had to move the Israeli citizens out who were in tears when they were forced out by the Israeli Defense Force. Now, they use that Gaza as a staging ground for sending rockets into Sderot in southern Israel and other cities, but now they can reach Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. Does anybody out there want to defend Hamas, which wants the extinction of Israel in its own charter, has never changed that? Mashal, who is the head of Hamas, based in Lebanon, went back to the Gaza and made a big speech about a year ago saying, after the 2012 fight between Hamas and Israel, that we're going to destroy the state of Israel. They cannot exist. What do you do about somebody that doesn't want you to exist? You certainly can't talk to them. So if you want to talk about that as well, an inflammatory situation in the Middle East, glad to have your comments about that. Let's go back to your calls on either of these subjects. Jeff, you're on with Mike Siegel, in for Jeff Kuhner at WRKO. Good morning.
Hey, how's it going, Mike? Thanks for filling in. Appreciate it. Going into I called Governor Jan Brewer's office late last week, and I also called Rick Perry's office. Wanted to know what their options on the table were with the National Guard. I couldn't get a straight answer out of any of them because I don't think they know who has more control over them. So my thoughts to them would be to gather up every National Guard member in both their states and expatriate them, and then repatriate them under the state law. That would put them under the state control. They could put them down on the border and start turning away all these disease-ridden illegal immigrants. And as far as the Gaza Strip goes, if I was Israel, I'd send the military in there and wipe them all out, give it back to the Israeli settlers.
Well, they just, the funny thing is, or the ironic thing, when Sadat and it wasn't Rabin, it was Menachem Begin. When Sadat and Menachem Begin cut a deal that Egypt would recognize Israel, and Israel would give back the Sinai, Begin asked Sadat, Anwar, will you take the Gaza Strip? And Anwar Sadat said, no, Menachem, I'm not taking the Gaza Strip. I don't want the Palestinians. I don't want anything to do with them. So Israel was stuck with it. And then they pulled out and gave it back to the Palestinians, and the thanks they got was now the Palestinians, Hamas uses it to attack Israel.
It's always going to be that way. Israel's been bending over backwards to make peace out there for decades, and it's never worked. What's that buffer zone they have? Obama said they needed to give it back to, what was it, Syria?
You talk about the Golan Heights.
Exactly. And Netanyahu was like, are you out of your mind? What do you think has been keeping us safe all these years? But that's just a powder keg out there waiting to happen. That's what I believe. Israel's done enough to try to appease these people. Nothing ever will if that's not proof enough. I guess your head will never come out of the sandpit.
I appreciate the point, and I thank you for calling. And the Golan Heights and the West Bank and the Gaza Strip and Sinai were all taken in the Six-Day War in 1967 because all of those were used as staging areas. The West Bank by Jordan, the Golan Heights by Syria, the Sinai and Gaza by Egypt, when they were all enemies of Israel trying to destroy it. So in June 6, 1967, the Six-Day War, Israel had no choice but to attack, and they took those areas in order to protect themselves. Now they're being told to give it back. If they give it back, it's just going to wind up being another staging area to attack Israel again. It just doesn't end. Let's go to Mike next. Mike, you're on with Mike Siegel on Boston's talk station WRKO in for Jeff Kuhner. Good morning.
Good morning, Mike. To answer your first question about impeachment, I believe he should be impeached. As far as Israel is concerned, for 66 years, from the day they took the Exodus boat into Jerusalem after the Holocaust, after the Second World War, they were never welcomed by the Palestinians. They had the olive branch for peace. And, after what they went through after the Second World War, you would think that they should have been welcomed and harbored against anything like that. But no, it was a continual barrage of hate, assault, and a continuation. Israel should move in with an occupying army today, as a matter of fact, with tank, artillery, infantry, and go in, and I don't care how long it takes. The time has come today to just end it once and for all. I mean, I experienced rocket attacks, 30 days in Vietnam. It's a weapon of horror and terror, and I mean the patience of Israel is absolutely unbelievable to me.
We wouldn't be this patient. We wouldn't be. And Israel hit 160 sites last night. But they've got 40,000 guys they brought up in the reserves to go do a ground attack. And maybe they need to take back the Gaza Strip and just annex it and say, this is now ours. You get the blank out of here and go back to stay in Bethlehem and some of the other cities that the Palestinians have. And we're taking control, and we're building fences all around Israel with electrical circuitry, so if you touch it, you're toast. Maybe they ought to do that.
Well, Mike, it's like the siege of the Alamo. They're surrounded, and Sarah Hanna said no quarter. Well, that's exactly what the Palestinians are doing to Israel. They're surrounded, and believe me, they're going to ask for no quarter with the Jews.
I appreciate the point. I thank you very much for calling, too. Carol is next. Carol, you're on with Mike Siegel for Jeff Kuhner at WRKO. Good morning.
Good morning. I'd just like to say I think he should be impeached, and I totally believe that he knows what he's doing. This is well orchestrated. As I had the pleasure of meeting Ted Cruz's father, Pastor Cruz, he stated that Fidel Castro ran on hope and change and fundamental transformation. Well, that was the platform that Obama, stole. And he's doing exactly what he intends to do. As far as Israel, I believe we should wipe them off the face of the earth. All the jihads and everything. I think that they need to survive. They have been quite patient, and I really hope that we get rid of all the Muslims because they're a threat to the whole world.
Well, I appreciate the call. Thank you. There's a billion Muslims. I don't think a billion Muslims are. If a billion Muslims wanted to become belligerent, they could do much more than they're doing now. It's unfortunately a small number. The only thing I would criticize members of the Islamic faith about, the majority, is that they don't speak out against these barbaric people and terrorists more strongly. They should be forceful about that. And that's important that they do that. Bobby is next. Bobby, you're on with Mike Siegel for Jeff Kuhner at WRKO. Good morning.
Well, Mike, on the subject of impeachment, if Obama is allowed to serve out his term, I think you're going to see some form of cap and trade and some form of the fairness doctrine. And I think impeachment is necessary, but not talk of it right now, because I think it will rally the Democratic base in the midterms. Impeachment is no good unless we have removal from office, which you need the Senate for. And we don't want the Dems rallying in the midterms here. So those are my thoughts, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on that, my thoughts.
I thank you for calling. I think that's reasonable. If you did it now, you don't know what the effect would be. That's Buchanan's point. I think if you wait until after the November elections and the Republicans win the majority in the Senate, and look, the truth of the matter is everything Obama's doing now is going to lose the Senate. But as I said before, he doesn't care about that. What he cares about is his ideology being imposed on this country. So if the Senate is lost by the Democrats to a Republican majority, the bottom line is going to be that then next January when they're sworn in, you know that there's going to be a more realistic opportunity to pull off an impeachment and a conviction in the Senate. Then you have to wonder whether he would voluntarily leave or whether we'd try to use the military to stay in office. That's always a major issue. All right, let's go to Rachel. Rachel, you're on with Mike Siegel for Jeff Kuhner at WRKO. Good morning.
Hi, Mike. Good morning. I don't know why it's even coming up as an issue, or even if, I'm not sure why it's still in question if he should be impeached.
Well, the Republicans are holding back. The only Boehner says is I'm going to file a lawsuit against him.
Yeah, absolutely. I understand that. And, but it shouldn't be a question. It absolutely, he should have actually already been out of office, in my opinion. Secondly, on the issue with the borders, and these children shouldn't even be touching our schools. That shouldn't even arise in a conversation. I'm a single mom, and I have, a child in public school, and it is scary. It's very scary. All the diseases that are out there and what she could contract potentially.
If I had kids in school, I'd be the way you are right now.
Yeah,
Rachel. You need to tell, not you personally, but everybody needs to tell their left-wing friends that this is not politics. This is health.
Absolutely. It's become more. It's way beyond politics at this point. It alters our state of well-being in the United States, it's unfortunate because to see that these people don't come together. It's like I'm one person, I'm only one person, but what we need to do is put our heads together. If we're all on the same page and we all want the same things and we're striving towards the same goal. We really need to come together.
Well, that's right. We need to come together, Rachel. And unfortunately, there are those who still insist that it's humanitarian to bring these kids in. It's just unbelievable. It's not humanitarian to them, and it's not humanitarian. What about the American people? Do we get to be treated with humanitarian concern in this country? I thought that the American people were supposed to be the first concern of our sitting president and our Congress and our courts. None of them have lived up to that. The courts have basically reversed initiatives in California. They passed initiatives when Governor Pete Wilson was in office. 60% of the vote saying no more benefits to illegal. And one federal judge said, no, you can't do it. It's unconstitutional. You've got to take care of those kids. So the 60% in California didn't count. It's very clear what the American people want, but they don't get it because the far left takes control. And even though it's not the majority point of view, as long as they're in office, they're going to keep stomping on the rights of the American people and make this an international dumping ground for illegals. Also want to talk about Israel and whether you think Israel should just go in and take the 40,000 ground troops and take care of business with Hamas and just destroy Hamas once and for all. How dangerous is that situation? What should the United States do, if anything? 617-266-6868. That's our number to Boston. Mike Siegel for Jeff Kuhner at Boston's talk station, WRKO. Back we are folks. 724 at Boston's talk station, WRKO. Good morning to you. We have a report from Hamas spokesman Hussam Badran. He says Hamas is not looking for a war. Really? But will not simply raise the white flag in the face of the major Israeli offensive. He says Hamas has no choice but to teach Israel a lesson. Well, I go back to the point. They want Israel destroyed at Hamas, so anything they say is going to ultimately lead to that result if Israel stood down and didn't protect and defend itself. Let's go back to your calls. Let's go to Kevin. Kevin, you're on with Mike Siegel in for Jeff Kuhner at WRKO. Good morning.
Hey, Mike. Good morning. How you doing?
Good.
You know, I think these people are suicidal to even suggest taking Sarah Palin's lead. You know, the people talk about the Republican Party being devoid of any leadership. They're devoid of intellectual leadership. And what Pat Buchanan wrote the other day in WND is intellectual leadership. Sarah Palin is an idiot. You know, Sarah Palin talks about the Constitution. You think Sarah Palin's ever read Immanuel Kant? You think Sarah Palin's ever read Thomas Paine? You think she's ever read Tocqueville? It's these people that are watering down this conservative message and making all of us look like idiots. Yes, there is a legitimate argument for impeaching Obama, but you don't tip your hand like that. You don't know what this man is capable of doing in terms of fixing these elections. I mean, to tip your hand like that it's beyond stupid.
Well, you know, I appreciate your point, because one of the things you just said, see, I don't want to get into it because it would take too long, and I want to get your calls, but I could sit here for an hour and justify an impeachment on the facts, on what we already know. The IRS, Fast and Furious, net neutrality, the National Labor Relations Board appointments. There's a litany of those. I read the 10 articles of impeachment from the National Black Republican Association, but I understand your point. What do you think of the idea of waiting until we have the elections and there's a majority of Republicans in the Senate, so that in January, if they chose to do an impeachment, the Senate would more likely go along with that? That's one answer to that question, but your point's well taken, sir. Thank you. All right, let's go to John next. John, you're on with Mike Siegel at WRKO for Jeff Kuhner. Good morning.
Yeah, hi. The point I wanted to make is, progressives or communist fascists like Obama, they like the Islamists, take the long view. Their strategies and tactics don't just look 2 years or 4 years out into election cycles, but they have like a long-term plan, and you can. This is just part of it. What you see with all the illegals coming in now, especially with the drops into communities. Which is,
but that's why that's why the report came out that he wants Elizabeth Warren, because he doesn't believe Hillary Clinton will be as far left as he is, but he believes Elizabeth Warren will.
That's and more, and she can be more controlled from his camp. Don't for a moment think that he doesn't. His narcissism is so severe that he believes that he will still be in charge, even though when he's gone. I think he believes.
Well, let's put it this way: the crowd that has him there would still be in charge. The George Soros crowd.
Correct. Yeah, and and I look at myself as a perfect example of how he looks at someone like me as the enemy. I have a piece of property, a couple of houses where I grew up, the house my grandfather built in a community outside of Boston. And over the course of my life, I've seen it go from a wonderful neighborhood to a terrible neighborhood.
Grounds for impeachment, because he's violating a Supreme Court order. And if they win the Senate in November, then you come back in January, you might have a real shot at impeachment and removal and conviction in the Senate. Mike Siegel here. Good to have you with us. We're going to come back on Jeff Kuhner's report at Boston's talk station WRKO, 617-266-6868 at 7:30 at Boston's talk station WRKO. Back we are, ladies and gentlemen. Good to be here in for Jeff Kuhner. Mike Siegel, 7:37 in the morning. No, it's not a Boeing 737. It is a flight at WRKO Radio. Good to have you with us. And talking about several items, let's pick up another one. You just heard on our newscast about the fact that the Prime Minister of Iraq is now saying that there is a chemical weapons plant that's in the control of these extremists who go even beyond Al-Qaeda. running this so-called country called ISIS, and that's western Iraq and eastern Syria, and also northern Iraq. And apparently there's still sarin gas in that venue. Now, we pulled out of Iraq, and now this happens. What was all of the bloodshed for if after we pull out, and we pull out too soon, to leave the Iraqis with this debacle? And don't you think that as they solidify the control in those areas of ISIS that they're going to go into Baghdad at some point to attempt to take over the entire country? And then what do we do then? Another shambles from this administration. So that's one thing you might want to talk about is what do we do, if anything, about that dangerous situation that could affect us? Look, if they've got sarin gas, you know they're going to try to get it into this country in the end. That's the bottom line. Meantime, a former national security advisor to Benjamin Netanyahu in Israel now says that Israel could conquer Gaza and clean it from all the facilities and terrorists of Hamas, but that could take months and is not now the priority of Israelis or the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force. Right now the attempt is to control the rocket attacks on southern Israel, and even Jerusalem and Tel Aviv have been attacked. First time that's ever happened. So if this continues, and I think Hamas will probably see better than tempting Israel in that regard, you're going to see, if it does continue, an operation that will take months, which would basically clean out Hamas of any military capability. Israel is prepared to do that, and the question I have for you is, should they do that? If you have neighbors surrounding you that want to attack and destroy you, do you go in and finally eliminate their ability to do that militarily? Number to Boston is 617-266-6868. Glad to get your calls. And, of course, the big issue unfolds every day with new drama. This is kind of like a soap opera. Every day there's something new. Today, it's about the medical harm to this nation from the diseased kids coming into this country. And as I said, you want to put them in a hospital near the border, isolate them and take care of them in that regard, that's fine. But they're going to be dispersed through the country. And not only those kids, but the MS-13, one of the worst terrorist groups on the planet, from El Salvador. The worst kind of brutality against people they commit. They're teenagers doing that brutality. 16 of them are here. They admit doing the brutality. And what's the bottom line? They're in this country, and they're going to be apparently dispersed as well. This is a very sick situation, and our country is suffering for it. So the question that I raised earlier follows from Sarah Palin saying it's time to impeach this president. Pat Buchanan says no, because it would fall back on the Republicans. Sarah Palin says yes, it's time to stand on principle. Your thoughts about that are welcome as well. Keith, you're on with Mike Siegel in for Jeff Kuhner at WRKO. A good morning to you.
Yes, hello. If the terrorists in Iraq develop weapons of mass destruction, they can't bring in this country unless the federal government lets them in this country. And they, just like 1993 World Trade Center bombers, they were all brought in here by the CIA.
Well, look, first of all, don't you think that we have cells of terrorists coming in from the southern border now? I mean, it's obvious.
Well, it's our government doing it. It's not the terrorists that are inviting themselves in here.
Well, if the government is promulgating terrorism to undermine the security and safety of this country, doesn't that even further justify an impeachment of this administration?
Well, the entire federal government is the enemy within. I mean, they're the ones who allowed terrorists in here in 1993, and they allowed them to come in here prior to 9/11 to take flight lessons, and they were reported by FBI agents, and they were told to shut up.
That's true. Well, that's true.
So our federal government is proliferating.
Well, I appreciate the point, and Keith, I thank you for that. And he makes a good point, because it is true that in August of 2001, a month before 9/11, there was a guy who went to Minneapolis, took flight lessons, and wanted to learn how to fly a 747, but he didn't want to learn how to take off or land. And so the flight school called the FBI, and they tried to get a warrant to get his hard drive. And Bush's attorney general said no. They were afraid of the political correctness crowd, saying, oh, you're going after a guy who's Islamic. Well, guess what? We didn't go after the guy who was Islamic. We wound up maybe causing the nearly 3,000 people to die at the World Trade Center, because had we gotten his hard drive in August, maybe we could have stopped what happened. Who knows? All right, let's go to Paul next. Paul, you're on with Mike Siegel for Jeff Kuhner at Boston's talk station, WRKO. Good morning.
Michael, to quote that Wayne Newton song, Danke schön, I want to thank the German team for beating the Brazilians. They got 5 goals. They devastated them before they knew what hit them. Yes, the first 45 minutes of the game. Now, Massachusetts, and I happen to live in Somerville, has a huge Brazilian population, and the vast majority of them do work, but they don't necessarily speak English, or they don't necessarily mingle with a lot of other people because they're concerned about being deported. Now, if you're coming over here from Germany and you're a doctor or an engineer, you're going to have a difficult time coming in. Now, here's a very important statement.
I guess you're saying that, I assume you're saying that to show the contrast with these people coming in from the southern border and being protected coming in illegally, and these other people with professions try to come in legally and have a hard time. Is that your point?
Well, yeah, my point is we don't want any European people who have actual practical skills. In other words, what people don't understand, if you're poor, uneducated, but you do have a work ethic and you speak English, you are going to be affected by these people coming in, because they're going to take those janitorial, those so-called menial labor jobs away from you, and they're going to work for less money. So the point I'm going to make now is nature abhors a vacuum. We all know that Obama is not a leader. He cannot make decisions. Look at his record when he was in the state of Illinois. And speaking of Illinois, that's just a microcosm of how bad things are under this administration. The city of Chicago constantly has black-on-black murder. Not being killed by white police officers, not being killed by white supremacists. Young black men killing other black men. And they're bringing women and children into the mix because they're in the crossfire, or they're giving the guns to the young girls. So Obama has used race to divide this country. He's used economics. In other words, if you're a wealthy person, you're considered to be evil. And the hypocrisy of that is we have so many wealthy Democrats like John Kerry. Look at how much money that Hillary's paying just to be down in the Hamptons this week.
Well, we all understand that. Look, Chicago's a good point. That's another thing to talk about here, because Rahm Emanuel, and thank you for calling, Rahm Emanuel was the chief of staff to the president, obviously. Now he's mayor of Chicago. They call him the Godfather there, but what kind of Godfather is he? Godfathers control their families. He's not controlling anything. The statistics were coming out this morning that the murder rate's going up in Chicago. It's horrifying, and it's black-on-black crime, and thugs and racists, and they are racists, like Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson, don't want to say a blank thing about that. They don't care at all about black-on-black crime. That's the worst crime that's happening to the African-American community, is black-on-black crime. That's the biggest number, the biggest problem. And these guys, Sharpton and Jackson, couldn't care less about that because they're racist pigs who don't care about the white people, who are, many of whom are trying to do the right thing for minorities to help them integrate into society. And that's already been happening for many years with affirmative action and other ways this country has tried to do that. The trillions we've spent on social programs so that African Americans can be uplifted, and many are. The fear they have, of course, is that they're going to become the so-called bourgeoisie and then become Republicans. So the Democrats want to keep blacks under their thumb by keeping them in a lower economic strata, whereas Republicans would say, let's have equal opportunity and let blacks flourish with their own talents and skills to be successful. It was Richard Nixon who created affirmative action, by the way. And so the nonsense from guys like Sharpton and Jackson, who don't want to talk about the biggest problem in inner city communities, black-on-black crime, is a fraud. And Rahm Emanuel and the liberal crowd, look, liberals and Democrats have run Chicago and the state of Illinois forever, ad nauseum. And they've been disgraceful in allowing the kind of crime that occurs to innocent people. Sometimes kids get caught in crossfire between the drug gangs, and they do nothing in Chicago to stop it. It's incredible. And Rahm Emanuel is supposed to be this icon, maybe running for president? Are you kidding me? Be more of Obama. Al, you're on with Mike Siegel in for Jeff Kuhner at WRKO. Good morning.
Good morning, Mike. How you doing? Listen, right now, I mean, this country is a mess, all right? And we understand that. We all know that. The whole, debacle at the border and everything. What people fail to understand, and it drives me nuts because I hear this from Christians and everything, we should be compassionate and everything. Look, even Moses, okay, if you understand your Bible, went to Pharaoh and said, I want to bring my people here, and I want to do it legally. I want to honor Pharaoh and whatever, right, and honor all the laws and do it right. So that negates that argument, right? So all the violence and the mess you're seeing in Chicago and whatever, eventually it's going to come to all of our states, all of us, because they're going to integrate all these people in there. They're not doing anything to vet who these kids are. There's already rampant disease in California of people who have been vaccinated and everything for stuff that's never been in this nation, or at least hasn't been in this nation in 200 years. So the president dropped a smoke bomb and took off and went golfing and just sat back and laughed. And that's kind of what we're seeing.
Well, that's right. But the point is, he may be laughing, but he's also got a very demonic design for this country.
Absolutely. And that's exactly it. It's all political. It's all political because they want the Democrats to look like the humanitarians and the Republicans look like those evil tyrants. But then on the other hand, and I'm only going to bring Israel into this one point, their people get terrorized, their people get kidnapped and killed, and they have a leader with a steel backbone who says no. And he goes and systematically starts to blow them off of the planet. And that's where our leader fails miserably.
Well, thank you for calling. He makes an interesting point. Netanyahu will not tolerate what's happening. He's absolutely right. He will protect Israel. But what's interesting about that is who in the Republican Party would do that? Now, we're facing not the same problem Israel faces. It faces extinction. Now, maybe we would face extinction as a nation that we've been, but who in the Republican Party would stand up the way Netanyahu stands up? Can anybody name somebody who would do that? I suppose you could say Ted Cruz, but who would actually stand up in this situation of no borders in this country, nation without borders, just a sieve that people just come through that sieve, all the cracks in the border, getting into this country by the thousands, and we sit back? Who in the Republican Party would stand up and be able to handle this and protect this nation? Good to have you with us. Mike Siegel in for Jeff Kuhner at Boston's talk station WRKO. Let's get the lines filled up. It's your country, at least so far. 617-266-6868. Your calls are next. Stay with us. We're back at it, folks. Nice to be here in for Jeff Kuhner, Mike Siegel, as we get back to your calls, thoughts, comments, and reactions to the issues after the news break at the top. We'll get into all of what we're talking about here, but also another way in which the government's coming down on each and every one of us through the Environmental Protection Agency. They're going to garnish your wages. We'll talk about that after the break. Brian, as we go through the situation in Israel, the situation at our border, situation in Iraq with sarin gas held by the radicals. Brian, you're on WRKO. Good morning.
Good morning, Mike. How are you?
I'm fine.
Thank you for taking my call and for allowing me to speak to Kuhner Country. I'm Brian from Obama's Chicago.
Wow. Okay. Then I'm glad you called, because you got to live with the consequence of far left liberal policies over there.
Oh, you have no idea what we go through. We have this Governor Pat Quinn who was sworn in after Rod Blagojevich was taken out of office, and Pat Quinn has continued to run our state into the ground. In 2011, they passed this temporary tax increase on us for our income tax going from 3 to 5%, which is a 66% increase, to help shore up the pension system. And they brought in $18 billion and wasted all that, and right now they want to turn that temporary increase into a permanent increase. And
well, the problem you have there is that they think there's an unending spigot of money coming from the people. But let me ask you about the Second Amendment, because Rahm Emanuel's done everything he could think of to try to stop people from owning guns. Problem is the criminals will keep owning guns. They don't care about the law. They're going to own the gun anyway. So now only the innocent people can't defend themselves. What about that problem in your city?
Well, the criminals don't really care about gun-free zones. I can tell you that right now. And when you drive around in some of the, unsafer areas in Chicago, I mean, I'm a local. I've been here my whole life. And I know the areas to be in, and I know the areas not to be in, especially at night. And they don't care. What Emanuel's doing and his Secretary Gary McCarthy are doing right now is they're just number punching, just like Democrats are doing with the economy. They're doing the same thing with these crime statistics. They're changing what is considered a murder and, what it's an undocumented homicide or whatever. Last week,
They're also, by the way, if 7 people get killed in an assault of murder, they're calling it one incident rather than
correct.
7.
Yes, they are. They sure are, yes.
Well, you've got to look. I don't know if the people of that city will ever wake up to realize maybe you need tough law enforcement like a Giuliani, but if they keep going to the far left and this soft, cushiony kind of approach, Chicago's going to continue to be a slaughterhouse. It's got a worse, as you know, murder rate than Afghanistan. What about that?
Yeah, well, hey, this last weekend we had 81 shootings in the city of Chicago, and 15 people lost their lives.
Well, it's horrifying.
Weekend.
It's horrifying. Brian, thank you for calling, and I appreciate the update on what left-wing politics does to a city like the city of Chicago. We go to Pete next. Pete, you're on with Mike Siegel at WRKO for Jeff Kuhner. Good morning. Got about a minute and a half.
I hard to believe because Chicago has the strictest gun laws on the planet. What are they talking about? That can't be right. That guy that just called is full of it.
No, they have. What I said was the strict gun laws keep the honest people from getting firearms, and the criminals don't care about the law.
No, they don't. Now look, Netanyahu, bombs away. I wish we had a president like the Netanyahu. Number one. Number two, I am disheartened over the Senate Minority Leader Harry Reid calling the justices 5 white justices. I mean, that really bothered me because they call a perfectly fine young man named Clarence Thomas Uncle Tom. What was he implying there? Was he implying that Clarence Thomas is an Uncle Tom?
I think Harry Reid needs therapy. I think Harry Reid is a sick, demented human being who doesn't know he's an intolerant old fuddy-duddy.
He's a Democrat, and there's no repercussions.
Ebenezer Scrooge was a nice guy compared to Harry Reid. He's a disgrace.
Can you imagine if a Republican said that?
Forget it.
If a Republican said that?
Forget it. Be all over the news. I got to get to a break. I thank you for calling, sir. Stay with us at WRKO.
News at the top and bottom. Talk in between.
Yes, it is. Thank me very much. Go right ahead, my friend.
This is AM 680 WRKO, Boston.